This is The First Century, a podcast devoted to stories from that influential period of history, including Rome, Judea, Christianity, and more. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Schmisek. Get ready to go back in time and enter a world before computers, the stagecoach, the printing press, or even stirrups had been invented for horses. We're about to enter the first century. Episode 44, Trouble Brewing in Jerusalem. Shortly after Fadus was appointed procurator of Judea, Claudius appointed Cassius Longinus governor of Syria. We remember that Cassius Longinus was descended from one of Julius Caesar's assassins, and had narrowly escaped death himself. While serving as proconsul of Asia, he received orders from the Emperor Gaius, Caligula, to take his own life, but fortune intervened. The command arrived only after Gaius had already been assassinated. Now named governor of Syria, he established his headquarters at Antioch, the capital. He soon faced a volatile situation in Judea. The procurator Fadus had been instructed to bring the high priestly vestments back under direct Roman control, but this move provoked fierce resistance among the Jewish population. In response, Cassius Longinus marched Roman legions into the region, bringing the situation to the brink of open conflict. War was only avoided when Herod of Chalcis intervened, sending envoys to Claudius to plead against the transfer of vestments. Claudius ultimately sided with Herod. He granted him authority over the temple, including the right to appoint the high priest, and allowed the vestments to remain under Jewish custody. Thus, one crisis was diffused, even as new tensions loomed. For example, around this time, Judea witnessed yet another one of the prophetic movements that periodically arose under Roman rule. The man at the center of this episode was Theudas, the magician or charmer, who persuaded a large number of people to follow him into the wilderness. The appeal of figures like Theudas is understandable when viewed against the backdrop of first-century Judea. The Jewish people were living under foreign domination, and many longed for divine intervention, and memories of the great heroes of the past, Moses, Joshua, Elijah, and Elisha, all remain vivid. Theudas tapped directly into these hopes in that he claimed to be a prophet and persuaded a great multitude to gather up their possessions and follow him to the Jordan River. We recall that the Jordan is where John the Baptist had developed fame and prominence with his ministry of baptism for the forgiveness of sins, so significant happenings at the Jordan River were within living memory. There, Theudas promised to perform a miracle that would unmistakably reveal God's favor. Like a new Moses standing before the Red Sea, Theudas declared that at his command the waters of the Jordan would divide, allowing his followers to cross on dry ground. To many, this would be more than a miracle. This would be a sign that God was beginning a new act of salvation. The Jordan River held enormous symbolic significance. It was the river Joshua had crossed when Israel first entered the Promised Land. If Theudas could part its waters, he would be presenting himself as a new Joshua, maybe a new Moses, perhaps even the leader through whom God would liberate his people once again. But Roman officials had learned to regard such prophetic movements as potential threats. What might begin as a religious gathering could quickly become a political revolt. The memory of earlier uprisings was still fresh, and Roman governors maintained networks of informants to monitor popular movements before they could grow into full-scale rebellions. Cuspius Fadus, the newly appointed procurator of Judea, was informed of Theudas's plans before they could be carried out. Rather than waiting to see whether this miracle would occur, Fadus acted decisively and dispatched a troop of cavalry against the gathering. The Roman horsemen descended upon Theudas and his followers before they could even reach their objective. The result was a massacre. Many of the followers were cut down where they stood. Others were captured alive and taken into custody. Theudas himself was seized by the Romans before he could demonstrate his promised miracle. His fate was swift and brutal. He was beheaded, and his severed head was carried back to Jerusalem. The display of Theudas's head served an important political purpose. Rome intended it as a public warning. Anyone tempted to gather crowds around prophetic claims, miraculous promises, or messianic expectations would see the consequences of challenging imperial order. The message was unmistakable. Whatever hopes people may have for a new Moses at the Jordan, Rome would not tolerate movements that could inspire unrest. In Jerusalem, the famine prophesied earlier by Agabus arrived. The Christian community had been prepared, as it had received gifts and resources from the church at Antioch. The famine was severe, but as serendipity would have it, the Jewish convert Helen, queen mother of Adiabene, a kingdom in the northern Mesopotamia that's roughly equivalent to ancient Assyria, happened to be visiting Jerusalem. She had been well-resourced for her journey, and when she witnessed the plight of the people, she eagerly shared with those in need. Not only that, but she sent her servants back to Alexandria and even to Cyprus to secure even more provisions. She distributed the food to those that were in need, and for that, she was well loved and admired by the people. Next time, we'll hear about a new Christian community founded in the city of Ephesus.